thank you all so much for coming. What a wonderful group we have here. So thrilled for you to join us. So thrilled to have all of you join us here for the talk today. I wanted to introduce Ombretta, who brought this very beautiful, very special exhibition to our space that's on view through May 14th, Coral Stories and Collective Actions. I'm going to read a little bit about Ombretta. Italian-born and Miami-based Ombretta Agró Andruff is a freelance curator and an environmental activist. She has curated internationally for more than 20 years, most recently at Achugare Foundation in Miami. Her passion for the Florida waterways inspired Art Sail, a nomadic residency and research initiative that investigates creative climate change inquiries. Agró Andruff is on the board of IKT, International Association of Curators of Contemporary Art, and organized its first US-based Congress in 2019 in Miami with a post-Congress in Havana, Cuba. I don't know if you're aware of what Ombretta's done just this week. She has a video series that she curated at Locust Projects. She has an exhibition, a group exhibition that's about the environment, about not the ocean, but the grasslands, the wetlands. That's at Art Serve. So you can just go up to Art Serve, just so close to here. And we were writing this in text. You're just an inspiration. Your dynamo, your energy is just amazing and infectious. So thank you so much for all the work that you do and for bringing these incredible people here today. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm so thrilled to see you all here today because I'm excited. Earth Day, there's so many organizations that are doing so many amazing events. So we really have no idea who will show up. So thank you so much for being here and supporting us. I'm really thrilled. So as Megan said, my name is Ombretta. Very briefly about Art Sail. What we do, we bring together artists together with scientists and marine activists and climate activists to understand how climate change and man-made pollutions are impacting the waterways. We're based here in South Florida, so obviously a lot of what we do is in and about South Florida, but this is really a nomadic platform because, as we know, the issues that we're dealing with here are not just about South Florida. So the idea is that we'll start collaborating also with artists and organizations elsewhere in the States as well in the world. The genesis of this exhibition is interesting. Megan came, I think it was about 2.5 years ago at this stage, to a talk where I was talking about the Coral Sonata, which is a soundscape in this room adjacent to where we are now. And she really was mesmerized by the idea of talking about coral through sound. And so we started a conversation, and I recommended, why don't we do an exhibition focusing on coral? And that's really how Coral Stories and Collective Actions came about. We have some incredible talent here in Miami, artists that have been dedicated years of research and passion, and through their beautiful art, whichever medium they use, they talk about ocean issues and ocean conservation and the ocean and the beauty of the marine ecologies, because we don't want to create a doomsday scenario that will push people away, but what we really want to do through the art that we're presenting is to bring people in, yes, to talk about the problems, but also to offer solutions and make people understand what they can do at an individual level as communities to bring those changes that are necessary to ensure that business as usual doesn't continue. And you're welcome, obviously, to run through the exhibition afterward. Part of what we do is this. So it's important, equally important for us, the art creation as well as the educational and the public outreach. And so I was really thrilled to work with Megan and the Art Center here because they have a very robust program, and that's really what we want to do. There's so many people in Miami who don't even haven't had the experience to swim, let alone dive or snorkel. And so the idea to bring the corals to them and the importance is very much part of what we want to do. So I am beyond thrilled to have these 4 amazing speakers with us today. We're gonna start with screening a short film about Rescuer Reef, which is a citizen science experiment that Dr. Lirman started, and so I'm not going to talk about it because I'm sure Dr. Lirman can do a much better job than I do talking about sort of corals and essentially what coral restoration is and the amazing job that they do with the University of Miami. And we also have here Patrick, who's a filmmaker who created this beautiful film. Laura Shapiro is one of the artists in the exhibition, and we will be showing another short film about her and her collaboration with a marine scientist about creating a project that she presented a couple of years ago at the Bakehouse, and also that it's sort of the outcome as also part of what we're showing here today in the exhibition. And then we have Mermaid, Merle Liivand. She is a swim champion from Estonia. Fantastic. And then maybe from there you can talk a little bit about the works that we have in this exhibition.
Sure. So the film obviously explained it. I partnered with a scientist who is a childhood friend of mine. She's a marine researcher out at University of California in Northridge. She's about my age, but she's like killing it in the science game. She works like 24/7. She's a teacher. She landed this giant NSF research grant to basically conduct research in French Polynesia. There's an island called Moorea. It's off the coast of Tahiti, and it's like a haven for a lot of these corals. So her research specifically focuses on the effects of groundwater and how they seep onto the reefs and cause algae blooms or things to basically be out of balance. And so that's what her research is, that she's trying to kind of demonstrate that. So, you know, like kind of what you said, how scientists are very academic and they're in the box and everything. I'm like not that way. Even though I have an academic background, I have an MFA, I did school for many years for art, but you know, I like to kind of like go around stuff and I like to think outside of the box. And she's very like, I noticed with the science that they were very careful about recording everything. So I think I got to go out there and observe her research. That was after this film was made. When she approached me with the opportunity for funding, she needed more of a broader outreach. And we follow each other on Facebook. We hadn't spoken in 25 years. I think she went off to do her thing and we kind of went separate ways. And I was doing a lot of this kind of climate change inspired work with the community, unfired clay, building these architectural sort of assemblages which would then decay. And she was like, oh, I know an artist, maybe she could be my outreach. And so I co-wrote a portion of the outreach grant, very, very tiny, out of like 150 page, like intense NSF grant, and she got the funding. So then COVID happened. And I was really determined to push it forward because I had gotten another independent grant from somewhere else. A family came and donated, I had the site. And so I convinced the director of the Bakehouse to let me proceed during a huge social practice project during a pandemic. It was very difficult. We had to do like 10 people at a time, in mass, separated. It took a month and a half to build, and about 3 hours to destroy. But it was up for a long time, and it was really nice that a lot of people got to see it over time, so that was really great. And then the following year, we were able to go out to Moorea. And also for this project, the filmmaker that I worked with, I was introduced at a climate change event. She was finishing her PhD at UM with, I think it's marine anthropology, just like an artsy, sciencey sort of degree. She was a master diver, underwater filmmaker, and all about coral reefs and the environment. Was a Nat Geo explorer, so I was just like, hello, come here. And we were able to make this amazing film. And her style is super beautiful. It's very like, as you know, like very emotional and really like brings the emotional power into the project. So even though the film doesn't necessarily communicate that hard research that she's doing, the point is to get people to be a little bit more invested emotionally into what's going on. And during our building sessions, we had so many conversations about what NISA is doing out in Moorea and why it's important. And so relating to the work in this exhibit, when I was out in Moorea with them, I met a couple of scientists that were doing transect scans, which is basically capturing multiple photographs of like kind of a landscape of corals and then translating them into photogrammetry, like a 3D scanned asset. And as a mold maker with texture, I was just like, oh my gosh. So I was able to get a lot of these scans from these scientists and then kind of modify them into different types of tiling systems, also 3D printing some of the moraine corals. There's some Pacific corals and some of those sculptures out there that were 3D printed and cast. So I have this whole other library, whereas with Future Pacific, the molds were made from coral skeletons. Now I can actually cast live corals. Previous to this, I was foraging leaves and doing a lot of biodiversity focused projects with plants. So I didn't automatically go to corals, it just kind of weaved its way in. And I'm really interested in how these two landscapes interact, which is kind of what NISA's research is doing. It's the water runoff from the crops is kind of like affecting the reefs. So that's kind of like where we're going from that. We have another project with NISA. She got a NSF career grant for the Rocky intertidal. So I'm really excited to learn about the tide pools and the things that exist between land and water, and these opportunities with scientists are such a great way for me to deepen my research and understand what it is that I'm doing so that I can share and talk about it with the world.
Well, and you're doing it wonderfully. Thank you. And now we're going to the Mermaid. So Mermaid and I have met several years ago, and she's been such an inspiration. She's really a tireless advocate for ocean and ocean conservation, everything the bay. She was cleaning this morning. We were cleaning last week for her birthday. And so maybe you can talk about a little bit your sort of athletic prowess, where you're coming from as a Estonian swimming champion, and kind of what led you to really be so engaged with ocean conservation, and sort of, and then obviously talking about the feat that you were training for on May 7th.
Yeah, I have to start with athletic story about how I went to my first far away swimming camp to Thailand, and I accidentally, without knowing, stole a piece of coral. And I didn't know you can't do that because I come from Estonia, Scandinavia. I mean, seeing ocean on the movies is like a Disneyland to me. It's like a dream where you want to go. And then I went to Thailand and I took that little piece of coral. And when I was I was 13, and when I was in a biology class, and we had we have to start learning about corals. I brought that little piece of coral to class, and the teacher was about to kill me. But it was good because she taught me that this is not okay. You are not allowed to take corals. And then I learned about corals, how important they are. And because as a swimmer, we go constantly to training camp to get the vitamin D. I mean, we are on 6 months of the year, we see the daylight for 4 hours. So that as you're training on a high level is hard. So we always have to travel to Tenerife, or some people went to Egypt. So my mom, best friend, is a travel agent, and I kind of, when I learned what I did wrong, I called her and I said, you have to tell all the travel agents who are in Egypt, Tenerife, Thailand, India, to teach the tourists that they are not allowed to touch the corals or leave with the coral on that. I hide my coral inside a fin, so I don't know how the border control didn't find it. But that was my first moment when I fell in love with the corals, and I started learning about the corals. But I didn't know in my life that I'm gonna end up in Florida. But I knew one thing when I was training in different places around the world. I want to live somewhere where it's ocean, because I felt being a pool swimmer and going to the world championships, it's amazing, but the chlorine to me sometimes is like, oh my god, again I'm eating chlorine for breakfast. I want to see how I can be different kind of athlete. I don't like to be in a box like you guys, right? So when I moved here to come here for university, and kind of for my health reasons, I kind of was scared to go to oceans because of all the shark stories, and I literally was thinking there's gonna be snakes in the ocean and alligator gonna come and steal my leg or something. And then when I started doing triathlon and being faster than men on the swimming part, I was like, maybe I should try this thing called open water swimming. And I started doing a mile swim. I won all the Miami mile swims, and it was a little was going away from pool towards the open water sport. And the funniest thing is that there are days when the ocean can be cold on the winter. I started learning about this thing called ice swimming, and I became ice swimmer while training here. And I went to world championships in ice swimming, and I was ahead of the world record there's world records in ice swimming. I mean, they literally cut out the ice and put the lane lines, and that's ice swimming without the wetsuit, by the way. And I started becoming so like passionate, testing my athletic abilities inside of water, because I mean, honestly, I feel more home inside the ocean than sleeping on my bed. Like, I guess that's part of me, and that's part of who I am and what I want to do in the life. But it took me a while to understand that oceans are in danger. And growing up in Baltic states, we always heard Baltic states is the most filthiest sea in the world. But when I started seeing plastic and trash here underwater, I started realizing that we see on the movie Stan, but tourists and then nobody has a clue what's happening underwater. And being passionate to make every single person to learn to swim as well, that has been my passion the last 10 years, to teach everybody to fall in love with the water. But now my passion is also that they fell in love with the water so they can appreciate what is happening with the oceans, that they can see that the trash ends up in the ocean. And about 2016, I was in Rio de Janeiro in Olympic Village, and 2 days after when the Olympics ended, I started seeing all the trash what was hiding during the Olympics start pouring to the lake, start pouring to the ocean, and I was on the Copacabana hotel, and it was like, wait a second, if that happens here, it happens everywhere in the world. People trying to hide it, we just don't know about it. And I came back, and then when I was swimming in Biscayne Bay, I started feeling that this is where this happens too. Like, I live here, but it happens here on my backyard. And I start like finding a ways to capture the videos and posting online. And that time people kind of knew me as a mermaid teacher. I have a mermaid school, and you know, being like, you know, combining my swimming, teaching to swim with the mermaid stuff now with the saving the oceans from trash. And it was like a long time where I was like, how come I can put my athletic ability to there that I can wake up the world? And there was a long time ago in the World Championships in open water going around the joke that I'm showing up in the World Championships with a mermaid tail to swim 10K race. And I was like, yeah, sure. There was even an article how professional mermaid is trying out for Olympics, and that got so many hits online. And then I met Usain Bolt. And when I was shaking his hand, his manager was saying, oh, this is Merle Liivand. She's a mermaid 10K swimmer. And he literally thought I swim 10K with the mermaid fin. And I was like, you know, shaking hand and laughing. No, I do them separate. And he said, come on, you should try. Or like, he kind of like joked over me, and I was like, if Usain Bolt calls me out, I guess that's my calling. And I got an opportunity to be invited to Los Angeles Olympic test event. You have to test out 10 years before the Olympics happens to somewhere, host a race course and everything. And I told to the organization that I don't want to come and swim another 10K. I mean, yes, as a professional, I do that, but I want the challenge. And I'm gonna come with a mermaid fin. Is it fine with you guys? Yes. Can we get Guinness World Record? Maybe. And then I got approved that the Guinness World Record people are coming there. But 2 days before the race, when I supposed to go and swim, and I was telling, yeah, I'm like doing breaststroke arms and kicking and 10K, and Guinness didn't even know how to react to that, because they were like I don't know, who can do that? Like, don't you want to start with 5K or something? And then 2 days before the race, I said to myself, I don't want to go down as another Guinness World Record holder. I mean, I want to go down the mermaid who actually makes a difference. And I decided 2 days before the Guinness World Record attempt that I'm changing the record. I'm gonna do the record without using my arms, because turtles, dolphins get stuck on a fishing net in plastic, and they can't use their arms. And the plastic also is inside our stomach. And I was like telling them in the morning of the record that I changed the thing and I explained how I'm gonna do it. And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I said, don't worry, just be next to me, check that I don't pull any arms, and let's see 4 hour, like that time when the race course is open, 4 hours. And let's see 4 hours later how many kilometers I made it. Because they thought I'm gonna be there for forever, you know, not using arms, just kicking. And then when I did my 10K and I finished and sat down on a beach, I looked at the clock, it says 2 hours and 54 minutes. And I was like, oh, I did under the 3 hours. That's fun. And then Gina said like, we're gonna, you just put the mermaid swimming to Wikipedia, because anybody can come and put the fin on and try to, you know, pull more than just kicking, but you're really bringing awareness. And
So Merle, sorry, quick thing, we have a couple of minutes, so.
yeah, that was the
move
first
to
record.
To the set, May 7th.
And now May 7, I'm actually going already for a fourth one, what is 42 kilometers, what is 26.2 miles in Biscayne Bay, because I really want everybody that day to understand Biscayne Bay is dying and we need to do something. So May 7, everybody can show up, cheer for me. It's gonna take 13 hours maybe less. And you can be part of a cleanup the same day.
And so, and it started like kicking off at 6 a.m., right?
Yes.
At the
Sunset,
Sunset Harbor.
Harbor. And
so
I go,
anyone who's interested in witnessing and being part, and just show up and cheer. And
I made her video of getting the Guinness record. Was it filmed?
yes, it was, and there is a documentary. In, if you go to Guinness website and you put Eco Mermaid, you find the documentary.
Love to see it.
Question that is both for the artists and athletes as much as for the scientists, and that is, I can see how an artist can look to a scientist and gather information that will inform the artist's work. Does that door swing both ways? Do scientists and PhDs, do you look at artists and say, gee, there's something there that informs my work as a scientist? I pose that to the two gentlemen and then to the two ladies in
Of
response.
course it does.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I can't speak for you guys, but I know that, you know, pulling in film is like so powerful. I know that my colleague really saw the value in what we did here, and it got so much great feedback, and like her supervisors were thrilled, and it's gone such a long way. So I think what I've noticed is, and then other of her colleagues are kind of like trying to get, you know, the filmmaker on board, and they're like, oh, we want a film. I mean, who doesn't want a beautiful film about the work that you do, right? And art as well. I know for Nissa that she saw a lot of value in that. Did it inform her Coral Reef research and change the way she thought about her work? I can't say, probably not, but I think definitely in the way that she communicates it, or thinks about ways to communicate it to the public.
I can say on an Olympic committee perspective and the Zoom meetings where I have been with them, they actually need these people here to understand their sport gonna die if scientists and artists are not coming out with their facts. And then they're not gonna be able to fund another Olympics someplace where the climate change is damaging a lot. And lots of athletes, you know, struggle with the overheating and hypothermias and all that, so they need these people.
Yeah, I would say it does. I think with science you can get very focused on like the who, what, where, when, the X's and O's of how something happens and how something works. You're trying to solve problems and figure things out. Whereas what's interesting about the art is that's more of exposes the motivation for why you do it. So you know, when it comes to conservation, the art taps into the more of the human emotional connection and the reason why people make it their careers to understand. So without an appreciation of the why and sort of how people think and feel, you're sort of, you know, I would say operating a little bit in the dark if your science, if the intention of your science is to protect and conserve. you really need to understand how people work and feel and interact, and art, that is in a lot of ways what art is. So I think as my career's been, it's a little bit different because I focus a lot on science communication now, but I do think if we think about the environmental crisis and everything that we're dealing with, a lot of attention gets to like greenhouse gases and like specific chemical things and like all of these concrete like scientific kind of metrics, but in reality it's a human behavior problem. It's a human nature problem. And so if we can't understand the way humans are, it doesn't matter if we can figure out like the next generation car or whatever. We have to understand humans, and to understand humans you have to understand art. So I think there's definitely like a full circle there, and I'd love to see more of that in the academic environment with scientists, especially for graduate students, because if they're just living in a silo and they don't understand that human element to it, they're going to be really limited in what they do.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, I'm getting to the point where I'm close to retirement, and so it's hard for me to change my ways. So it used to be that you did the science, you wrote a paper. If you wrote a really good paper, maybe a couple hundred people read it over 5 or 6 years, and you went to a meeting and maybe a couple hundred people listened to you talk, and that was about it. That's no longer the case. That's not enough anymore. So it's not just about the science; it's about communicating the science. And art is just such a powerful way of doing that. So we're all kind of challenged and challenging our students to do that. And they get it. Students that come through our program these days, they're eager to go beyond just writing papers and going to meetings. So they are in social media, and they are doing these amazing outreach projects. Art being just one medium, and which they are communicating. But I think that it's changed so much that that's forcing us to change. And so I'm working with, you probably don't know, Jimena Caminos, who's setting up the reef line. That's going to be the first kind of underwater park that combines art with reefs in Miami Beach. She's got this grand scheme to have 7 miles of artificial reefs made out of artificial sculptures covered with corals, and with this hybrid approach to reef restoration. And that's the way that we have to operate. We can't just be within our boxes. We gotta extend beyond. And it's been challenging for me, but I'm here.
Well, and it certainly takes a village, so we really need everybody, and so I'm just so excited that we can have these kind of conversations.
Coral more capable of standing up to acidation and warming of the water?
We're doing several things. One is trying to recover corals as fast as we can, because we need to have corals there so that reefs function as they should. Not just for corals, but for fish and lobsters and sponges and all things. But at the same time, we can be growing and planting the next wave of climate victims. Mm-hmm. So we can't just propagate corals and plant them and hope for the best. So the science side of restoration is focusing on exactly what you just brought up: is how do we maximize the survivorship? How do we prime these restored populations to be resistant to the next OA, to the next. So we're working at all levels. We're doing managed breeding. We're doing managed relocation of corals from warm environments into cold environments. We're exploring gene editing to try to bring in warm genes into our restored populations. So growing and planting corals is one of the things we're doing. We're also working at the back end on the science to try to make sure that whatever we plant has a better chance of surviving compared to what's out there today.